Hello and welcome back to part 2. It's quite a long lesson this, but I want to show you the whole process really, the drying times as well. Now just using some more burnt umber, and while it's quite damp around this area, you can see I'm just feeding it in to the trunks, and this old gnarly tree is about to fall in at some stage in the near future. It's just balancing precariously, so I thought I'd add that. Looks quite nice. So we're on our number 6 rigger brush and just feed in raw umber and light red into the tree trunks. And what I'm doing here is these trees on this cliff are all at an angle, and I think it quite nicely echoes the angle of the rocks, which I'll be finishing off shortly. So while the paper's damp, you use a damp brush, you get all these different textures going on. Now I'm just doing the bough that is sort of coming from behind me. It's a big thick bough in the foreground, just to give a little bit of depth. I'm not going to overemphasize this though, like I did in the first painting. So I'm just feeding some brown with some blue in it, so just to darken that top edge. So that makes the distance fall back a little bit. Gives depth to the picture. This foreground has dried now, more or less. I've not checked underneath, and I'll be working on that as we go along. You see now the rocks. It's kind of got like stratum along, at that particular angle, so it's running in with the trees. Quite like that. Again, it's a case of random, it's difficult to do random, isn't it? But so now, just making that so it's the edges aren't too sharp. Just making a rough mix of what I've already got on my palette, as you can see. So what I'm doing now is establishing kind of where the water hits and starts to spray out, similar to painting clouds really. I'm not going too hard on this because I'm not sure whether I want a lot of definition or not so much definition. My mind's eye is at this point thinking make it as dreamlike as possible around this area. you can see the sketches I did of this part. It's kind of a precursor to the fast running water. In reality, it's probably twice as long as I've painted it, but to get it into one piece of paper, I've truncated that part. Sticking with my number 6 rigger, because obviously you get into a rhythm. So now, like, it's just the same as when you're painting skies and clouds. I'm using tissue just to keep it in check. Now for the water, I want to introduce Payne's Grey. I've got my number 6 round brush, which, like I explained in the last lesson, it's more abrasive. I can kind of scumble stuff out. I'm thinking, let's get a bit of misty effect a little bit further along. Now start thinking about the darker areas in the water. I made a conscious effort not to use any masking fluid or white paint, so it's quite a challenge. But the practice in the last time I painted it, what I figured out was being as free as I can, rather than thinking too much about it and doing too much detail. It's just a case of practice how you want it to look with an empty brush, and then start as light as you can. I've got the pencil marks that I put on there obviously to go to, which give me like this part I'm working on now, that's just about to tip over, and at the edge you've got a good white line. And generally water going along, when you're looking from this viewpoint, it's most of your lines have got to be horizontal just to get the flow of the water, and then once you've got that, you can then think about the eddies and do, a little bit darker. But we're on very light blue with a very little touch of Payne's Grey going on here. At this point, just gone back a little bit. When you're looking at rapids, the water actually goes upwards at a lot of areas. It goes so fast against rocks, it appears to be going up, and that's what's happening at this part of the river. It's going up, and then it'll come crashing back down, and then over the waterfall. There. It's difficult to get that to look as though you've just done it in a quick stroke. Being quite careful around the landing stage, because I don't want that to appear. See there now, it goes up. So I haven't been very careful. Even though it looks on the finished picture like I've just put the lines there. in reality I've done quite a lot of work to get them in the right place. Up and then over into the rapids and then into the valley beyond, which is mostly shrouded in mist. So again, just checking and rechecking. On the day that I sketched this scene, it was so misty, so wet. The paper I was actually sketching on became totally sodden. I had to change to charcoal just to get the image. Okay, so we've gone a little bit darker now. We've mixed blue into the Payne's grey. Still damp paper. Still messing around with the mist. Now what I'm doing, I'm just putting the first wash on the visible rocks. There's not many visible because it's so full. It's probably the fullest I've ever seen. I can't imagine it getting any fuller, but it probably does. So from that point of view, it makes the subject matter quite a lot easier to portray. And again, the trick or the challenge is to play it, not to put too much detail. Little bit, you need a little bit, so the eye knows what's going on. But as you can see now, it's a very light. It's the same grey colour that I used for the water down below. There's some pretty dry brush technique going on there, so it just catches the texture of the paper and leaves other parts of it wet. So that's with a fairly dry brush. I decided to do those rocks first because the colour would have gone too dark, you know, for down here what I'm working on now. So again, this time I'm thinking, right, don't cover every part with the dark, just leave some of it as the light grey. Still leave the white because that doesn't change, does it? There's our up and over. Keep getting tempted to do more and more in there, but I've got to just resist the temptation. What I'm doing, I think, here, I've just remembered what I keep scumbling that mist area. I've tried out some new trace down, which is in the drawing section, you know, and you see how I got the drawing onto the paper, and it doesn't come off once you've put the trace down. You can't rub it off. So I have that little mark and I'm trying to cover it desperately looking at the original finished on the wall, I've done it, I can't see it anywhere. So I've just got to remember in future, just be very careful where I want somewhere white. I've got to just think. More explained it in the drawing section. You can actually see me there going up and across, can't you, as though it's a hill. Let's see. On to my smaller rigger now, number 2 rigger. I'm putting the first wash onto this big boulder, taking care to let the water still visible on the left hand side of it, because that's, again, because it's in flood, it's kind of being pushed into areas it wouldn't normally go into, the water that is. So that wash has dried now virtually, so there you see I put too much in there, so I took a bit off and left just a touch of it on the top of the rock. So again, just suggesting, but getting an accurate sketch down just allows us to know that these rocks are in exactly the right place. Just adding some raw umber to that now. While it's damp, it'll create little textures on there. Just add a little touch of brown into all the other little rocks. So you see the economy of work on that area. And again, I'm looking at the original, I'm quite happy with the way that looks. It does grab the eye, but it also allows the eye to move downwards and into the fast flowing water. Right, I've just put out some more lemon yellow. Mix up a nice green. And virtually everything in this area is covered in moss. So everything really has got a green tinge to it. Especially in high summer when it's damp and the river's full. Or late summer, I should say. Now while I've got my number 2 rigger going in green on the palette, just flick a few branches and twigs and grasses. liking the green in that rock, I think. That's why I keep just adding a little bit more. It's always a good idea to have a thought to think before, you know, when you mix a colour, you've got a particular brush on the go. Just use it to do this, you know, the little things. On this video now, looking at it while I'm commentating, I'm looking at that foreground and thinking that could have been left, that could be finished. I wish I'd left it like that. I do carry on in the next section. And I think I basically overwork it, but I know for next time, because I'm going to do this piece quite a few times. I like it so much, you know, different times of the year, it'll always look different. And here we go now with the number 6 round. Again, just the process of darkening things up. You see now the different layers showing. You know, you hear about watercolour painting and the different washes. Well, that's what we're doing. Just deciding now when will the dark blue show after the misty bit. So I've cleaned the brush and scumbling what's already dried, and then again flicking into the damp paint. See, when it starts to go into the wrong kind of shapes, when it dries, sometimes the paint does its own thing, goes into a bloom or something. Just damp, bristly brush. You can kind of move that water around a little bit without it getting muddy, because I know ultramarine blue and Payne's grey, you can mix it as much as you like. That's that pesky line I wanted to get rid of there that I'm messing with. So annoying, isn't it? Right in the middle of the picture. But again, looking at the finished original, I'm quite happy that I was messing around in that particular area, because it looks exactly like the part that I sketched originally. Building up these undergrowth features now. There's not going to be much detail to see, because everything's out of focus, if you like, because of the mist. Or spray, I should say, not the mist. See again, dry brush, bristly brush that's dry, you know, skipping over the textured paper. you that twinkling effect. That's definitely one thing from this project that I can I'm happy with, is the fact that I'm not using masking fluid or white paint. Again, a bit dry brush on these rocks now for the same reason, to give it texture. Coming towards the end of this lesson now. It needs to dry now because there's a lot of water on there again. So dry out my stuff. I'll see you in the next lesson.